Let's dive right into it. Number 10. Mariner 1 catastrophe. NASA's Mariner 1 was supposed to be America's first spacecraft to explore Venus. But in 1962, it exploded just minutes after takeoff because someone forgot to add a line over a letter in the guidance code. Yes, not sabotage, not cosmic radiation, a punctuation error. The launch started smoothly. But moments later, the rocket began veering off course, flying erratically like a drunken pilot. The problem? A formula meant to stabilize the craft was corrupted by that single missing line. As the rocket spiraled out of control, computers flooded it with conflicting course corrections. It began jerking and weaving like a sugar-high toddler on roller skates. With no way to regain control, Mission Command was forced to detonate the rocket midair before it could pose a danger to people or ships in the Atlantic. A one-line typo, $135 million, gone in smoke and fire. Number 9. The London Beer Flood. In 1814, a freak accident at the Horseshoe Brewery in London sent a 15-foot wall of beer roaring through the St. Giles district. A wooden fermentation tank, 22 feet high, holding over 3,000 barrels of fermenting ale, suffered a critical failure. One of the iron rings snapped. The workers ignored the crack. Bad call. Within an hour, the tank exploded, triggering a chain reaction with other nearby vats. In total, over 300,000 gallons of beer poured into the surrounding streets. The deluge flattened homes and swept furniture away like matchsticks. People living in basement apartments were hit first. A mother and daughter drinking tea were instantly overcome. Nearby, mourners at an Irish wake were drowned where they stood. While many perished in beer, others saw it as divine fortune. People ran with buckets to collect it. Some just drank straight from the flow. 8 people lost their lives that day. The brewery called it an act of God to escape liability. Number 8. Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse. In 1940, Washington State had a sleek new suspension bridge that quickly earned the nickname Galloping Gertie. Why? Because it bounced and twisted in the wind like a giant ribbon. The design prioritized aesthetics over engineering stability. The result was less a bridge and more a giant wind harp. It was built super slender and lightweight. Unfortunately, that made it extremely vulnerable to something called aeroelastic flutter, a fancy way of saying it wobbles violently when the wind blows. Picture holding a piece of paper and blowing across its edge. Now picture that, but scaled up to a massive structure holding vehicles. On November 7th, the wind picked up. The bridge began to sway uncontrollably. The metal twisted like someone wringing out a wet towel. A motorist was stranded when his car broke down mid-span. He escaped crawling on his hands and knees. His dog, too scared to move, tragically became the collapse's only casualty. Number 7. The Great Boston Molasses Flood. In early 1919, a massive industrial tank in Boston's North End burst apart, releasing over 2 million gallons of molasses into the city streets. This steel giant stood as tall as a 5-story building and had been leaking for months. Local children used to collect the seeping syrup in buckets like a free candy shop. Instead of repairing the tank, the company chose to paint it brown to disguise the leaks. Then, on January 15th, the inevitable happened. The tank ruptured with thunderous force, unleashing a molasses tsunami that traveled at 35 miles per hour. The sticky wave obliterated buildings, moved entire structures, and even tore apart elevated train tracks. People caught in the flood couldn't swim or escape. The more they struggled, the more they sank. It was like slow-motion drowning. Cleanup efforts were chaotic. Rescuers got trapped trying to reach victims. Everything stayed gooey and slick for months. Eventually, they discovered that salt water helped dissolve the mess. Some victims were found completely preserved in molasses. The company tried blaming anarchists, but the truth was they had skipped basic engineering checks. They just welded the tank together and hoped for the best. To this day, on hot summer afternoons, locals say you can still catch a faint scent of molasses lingering in the air. Number 6. The multi-billion-dollar typo. In 2005, a Japanese financial institution made one of the most expensive typos ever recorded. They meant to sell one share of stock at 610,000 yen. Instead, they listed 610,000 shares for 1 yen each. To put that in perspective, imagine trying to sell your house for $500,000, but accidentally offering 500 houses for $1 each. The The company didn't even have that many shares. The order tried to sell 41 times more stock than existed. The bank frantically tried to cancel the order, but the Tokyo Stock Exchange's system kept rejecting their requests. Other traders noticed the mistake and swooped in like vultures. They bought up shares at lightning speed, taking advantage of the glitch. By the time the error was resolved, the bank had lost over $225 million, all because of one misplaced number. Number 5. The Wicked Bible. Back in 1631, two printers made a blunder so monumental that the monarchy nearly wanted them executed. Their task was simple: print new editions of the Bible. But they managed to omit one very important word, the word not. As a result, the commandment that should have read, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," became, "Thou shalt commit adultery." King Charles I was absolutely livid. A Bible telling people to cheat on their spouses was not going to fly. He ordered every copy destroyed. The edition became infamously known as the Wicked Bible. The printers were fined heavily, hauled into court, and lost their license to print. Another edition from the same period mistakenly read, "Printers have persecuted me," instead of "Princes have persecuted me." Given how things played out, that error now feels eerily accurate. Despite the effort to destroy all of them, around 10 copies have survived to this day. Each is now valued at over $100,000, making it possibly the most profitable typo in publishing history. Number 4. The Goldsboro Nuclear Incident. In the year 1961, a U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber carrying a pair of nuclear warheads began disintegrating mid-air while flying over North Carolina. Not exactly the best time for your plane to fall apart, especially when it's loaded with enough explosive force to obliterate the entire eastern seaboard. Each bomb was roughly 250 times more powerful than the one that devastated Hiroshima. It was like having two miniature suns plummeting from the sky. One of them smashed into the ground at nearly 700 miles per hour, embedding itself deep in muddy farmland. The other descended slowly with the help of a parachute. These bombs were designed with 6 safety mechanisms to prevent accidental detonation. On the one that landed gently, 5 out of 6 safety systems completely failed. That left just a single, flimsy switch, worth maybe 20 cents, between total annihilation and a miracle. The military launched an urgent recovery effort, spending days excavating the buried device. But they only managed to retrieve some components. Several parts still remain nearly 180 feet underground to this day. To prevent future accidents, the government purchased the land and installed a sign reading, "Do not dig here." Now, a local farmer cultivates soybeans on the very same plot. Arguably, those may be the most closely watched soybeans in the nation. A nuclear weapons analyst later admitted, "We came closer to nuking North Carolina than we ever did during the Cuban Missile Crisis." Number 3. The Titanic's substandard rivets. Everyone knows about the iceberg, but few realize that millions of small metal rivets played a major role in the Titanic's fate. These thumb-sized fasteners were literally the glue holding the ship's steel hull together. The Titanic used over 3 million rivets during construction. But instead of using high-quality materials across the board, the builders opted for cheaper iron in critical areas. When the iceberg struck, the rivets weren't strong enough. They popped out like shirt buttons after Thanksgiving dinner. Once several gave way, it triggered a chain reaction. Water poured in through the seams. Think pulling one loose thread and watching your entire sweater unravel in seconds. Ironically, while they spared no expense on fancy decorations, gold trim, luxurious woodwork, they skimped on the one thing that mattered most: keeping the hull intact. Number 2. The Vesa. Picture this. You spend 2 years building what you believe is the most impressive warship in the world, and then you watch it sink barely 1,300 meters into its maiden voyage. That was the tragic story of the Vasa, Sweden's grand attempt at creating an invincible naval superweapon. This massive vessel was basically a floating museum, adorned with ornate wooden sculptures and equipped with 64 bronze cannons. The Swedish king had one goal: to make enemy ships surrender purely out of fear by looking at the thing. But there was a slight oversight. The ship was too tall, too narrow, and horribly imbalanced. Imagine building a luxury mansion on a canoe and expecting it to survive rough seas. During testing, 30 sailors sprinted across the deck to simulate motion, and almost tipped the entire thing over. Rather than fix the clear design flaw, authorities just told them to stop running. Problem solved? On launch day, celebrations were huge. Thousands gathered at the harbor, including sailors' families. The cannon hatches were flung open to impress the crowd with their weaponry. Then, just a gentle puff of wind. Not a storm, not a squall. A breeze so soft it wouldn't ruffle your hair. That's all it took. The ship tilted. Water poured in through the open gun ports like rain through open car windows. Within minutes, the Vesa was on the bottom of the harbor. 2 years of effort turned into an underwater attraction in just 20 minutes. Number 1. Mars Climate Orbiter Disaster. NASA spent $327 million developing the Mars Climate Orbiter, only to watch it vanish due to a careless mistake in unit conversion. This robotic spacecraft was meant to be Mars' weather reporter, measuring atmospheric patterns from orbit. But instead of studying clouds, it ended up mimicking a flaming meteor. One engineering team used the imperial system, pounds and feet, while the other team used the metric system, newtons and meters. When the craft approached Mars for orbital insertion, this mismatch in calculations caused it to descend far too close to the planet's surface. At those speeds, even Mars' thin atmosphere acts like a solid wall. The probe, not designed for such stress, disintegrated instantly. And no one spotted the error during the entire 9-month journey through space. It's the space travel version of driving across the country, only to discover at the final mile that you've been following an upside-down map.